I'm John Corcoran, the founder of the John Corcoran Foundation, and our mission is to eradicate and prevent the illiteracy in America today. There are millions of people that can't read in America today. 25% of the population learns to read like birds learn to fly. I was not one of those. I had difficulty. In fact, I didn't learn how to read until I was 48 years old. I graduated from high school, I graduated from college, and at the age of 48, I finally learned to read, write, and spell my native language. 48 years I guarded my secret. My wife was the only person that I told that I couldn't read. I knew that it was for me embarrassing. I knew it was shameful, and I knew I had to guard it, and I knew I couldn't trust anybody. I couldn't trust anybody with that. I trusted with my wife with it, but I didn't trust anybody else my entire life. When I told my story to the world, that I was the teacher for 17 years and I couldn't read or write or spell, it was shocking to some, but it's a true story, it's a fact. No one in 48 years of my life ever saw me write a sentence or a paragraph because I did not know how to write a sentence or a paragraph. Sometimes people ask me, why didn't I ask for help? Children should not have to ask for help. Adults are responsible to guide and impart those skills necessary for their success in school and their life. I went to school with high hopes to learn to read, and I went for 6 years of my life. I was a winner, and by the time I got to the second grade, I was in the dumb row where the kids that had struggled with the printed page. I was there. Did people know? Did teachers know? I gotta believe that they knew. I have that feedback, but I always have, I don't really like saying I was a good teacher. I taught for 17 years. It's pretty, my advocacy, I don't want any teachers that don't know how to read, write, spell in the classroom. So it was always a moral dilemma for me. And it's very hard for me to say I was a good teacher. I know I was told I was a good teacher, and I've had students tell me I was a good teacher, and they still tell me that when I see them. In a profession for 17 years, you never suspect a teacher was illiterate. And so I had to guard that secret. Well, the first thing you have to do is check row. And I would have one of my 3 aides take care of that for me. Check the row and turn in the absence, the names of the absence. I never wrote on the board. If there was anything that needed to be written on the board, that the aide would take care of that. There was a daily bulletin that was also had to be read in those days, and it said right on the bottom of it, teachers, please do not allow students to read these. Read them yourselves, something to that effect. And every morning I had one of my aides read the bulletin. They'd read the bulletin, and then they'd get down to the bottom of the page and they'd read, teachers, please do not allow students to read this daily bulletin. and then the class would laugh, and then we get on to our business. Also, I had to create an environment that was an oral and visual environment. I'd have a film, or I'd have a clip. I would maybe see an outstanding program like Roots, and I would tape it on the VCR, and then I'd bring it to class, and that would be what we would do. We sat in a circle, and they got the information, and then we would have discussions of something that was on. I lived in a multicultural community, taught in a multicultural school district, where I was doing some bold things in the classroom by having discussions about racism, and there weren't very many people. There weren't probably any other people in the school that were having the kinds of discussions that I had. So in that sense, I created an environment that was progressive, you could say, and encouraged, and there was some success in there. People ask me that question, all the stress and strain. It was a lot like living behind enemy lines, being a spy behind enemy lines. That would be fearful. You'd have to be very clever or on guard all the time. As a teacher, I used to really fear our school meetings, our teachers' meetings after school. Once a week, we'd go into a room with all the teachers and principal, and the principal was my boss, and he could tell me what to do. And sometimes we do a brainstorming session. He said, let's get these ideas on the board, and he'd call on a teacher to put these ideas on the board. And I lived in fear of being asked to put something on the board. And you can't make yourself invisible when you're 6'4", and there's no pillars to hide behind, and you can't be late, to a faculty meeting. And so my bailout plan was, if he did call on me, he said, John, get up here and put this up on the board for us. I would stand up, I'd take 2 steps, maybe 3 steps, grab my chest and drop to the floor and say, call 911. So I was always prepared not to get caught in those kinds of situations. I had to do it, and I had to be clever and smart. I never did feel clever. I always felt dishonest. I didn't like it. My parents didn't send me off to college to cheat and lie. That was always a moral dilemma for me. I think I believed my mother and father. They told me I was a winner. I always wanted to be a winner. I was competitive, and it was. I always knew how to count money since childhood, and I'm a capitalist, and I'm all of those things that were sort of attracted me to business. The staff of literate people, and I had an in-house attorney. And when you're the boss, you can ask somebody to read something for you. They don't, you sign their paycheck. They're not going to say you read it yourself or you write this yourself. So, when I had my business and employees, that wasn't a problem. When I was a teacher, I usually had aides, and there are some situations where, my wife did the reading and writing for me. Those things were kind of low-level things, I had most of that really managed. Frustrating thing is when I go to the city hall to get a change on a plan, and I give the change to them orally, and they say, well, fill out this form and give it right back to me, and you can get what you need. And one time that happened, and I tried to manipulate a bureaucrat the person working in the government office to do the paperwork for me, and I couldn't get them to do it. So I have to take the paper, and I have to go get in my car, and I have to find my wife so she can fill a simple 1-page, 2-sentence form out, and then I take it back. So something that should have taken me 10 minutes took me 2 hours. We've been passing children through schools for 50, 60 years. It's called social promotion. And I experienced that. That was a part of it. I didn't identify, or didn't want to identify with people that couldn't read. I spent a lot of time of my adult life masquerading as a literate person. I always wanted to learn how to read. And it's a mistake if someone says we're lazy or we don't care. We just have difficulty processing language. I would say the awareness, you have to be aware of a problem, and then you have to have the solution to it. And I always knew the problem. I didn't know Barbara Bush knew there was a problem. I didn't know the Carlsbad Public Library had a problem, knew there was a problem. And I was always, probably all of my life, and certainly when I was young and a student, I prayed and hoped that someday I would maybe learn through osmosis how to read. So I was anxious to learn to read. Literate people have underestimated the value and the power and the importance of their own literacy. They take it for granted. I've had the opportunity, as I told you earlier, to tell my story in a lot of places, at the White House and in the jailhouse. Something that I saw there I wish the rest of the world could see. I went there to speak to them because they had been in a reading program that I lobbied for some funding for, and I went back to visit them to see how they were doing. And I witnessed a man who had been incarcerated for probably 10 years, reading at the 3rd grade level, weeping like a child because he was doing that. And why wouldn't a man incarcerated? And by the way, we have 50 to 60% of the people that are incarcerated have deficiencies in basic skills. Why wouldn't a man that's incarcerated, reading at the 3rd grade level, is like, this is a gift. This is the answer to his prayers, his hopes. So I wish people could have witnessed that. I think literacy skills invite you to belong to the community, invites you to be a better citizen, invites you and gives you an opportunity to have a better job. It invites you to have the opportunity of pursuing education. One of the things that I have had the opportunity to do I've been an advocate, a public speaker, and I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of people, and I speak, and people come up to me, from parents to teachers to students that share. They tell me their secret, and there are a lot more of us that have this difficulty learning to read, and we're in a lot of places. I call these people my fellow travelers because it only takes me, obviously they hear me speak and I tell my story, and they say, that's my story. And they come in all kinds of sizes and social and economic groups. We don't all have exactly the same story, but we do know we are fellow travelers. Illiteracy doesn't discriminate. Most everybody would say education would solve a lot of our problems, and you don't really get an education if you're reading at the 3rd grade level. We're more normal than abnormal. And the key is proper instruction. And it's really about looking under the microscope at teaching disability instead of so much learning disability. And the key to teaching people like me how to read, write, spell is proper instruction. Proper instruction comes from properly trained teachers. I had a severe auditory discrimination problem, and that's the kind of language. I mean, that's the problem I had. Identify that problem. We do have diagnostic tools that can identify some of these issues, and then you concentrate on those issues. You just don't put an umbrella over them or a big tent over somebody and call them disabled. I think it's time for us to quit using that term. I believe the term learning disabled is contaminating to both the teacher and to the student. I would say remember this, and I know you know this, it's to validate. We are not dumb. And it's never too late to learn to read. I don't believe when I ask that question, would you like to improve your reading skills? Would you like to improve your writing skills? Would you like to improve your... I don't ever remember anybody saying they wouldn't like to. If they do say, I don't need to, I'm too old. Part of it is because this is part of what happens to us. I know that, fellow traveler. And I suspect it's because we gave up on ourselves. Literate people have underestimated the value and the power and the importance of their own literacy. They take it for granted. And I don't take it for granted. And I know what it means to be 15 years old in high school and not to be able to read. And I know what it means that you can't write your homework, you can't please the teacher, you can't succeed. So you end up dropping out, or you end up getting pushed out, or you end up finding ways to cheat and stay in the system. The little world needs to understand our desperation and not being able to compete or to participate fully in the dominant literate world. Once I learned to read, I was so overcome with the joy